All right, we're back with another lesson slash sermon I wrote. It's called "A Leader Is Born," and so the theme for this one is God calls everyone to something, and it's our job to make sure that we are answering that calling that He has for us. So pretty much, if you're called to lead, answer that call that God has for you and lead people to Christ. Be that leader that God is calling you to be. And so in Joshua 1, verses 6 through 9, it says, "Be strong and courageous, for you are the one who will lead these people to possess all the land I swore to their ancestors I would give to them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the instructions Moses gave you. Do not deviate from them, turning either to the right or to the left. Then you will be successful in everything you do. Study the book of instructions continually. Meditate on them. Meditate on it day and night, so you will be sure to obey everything written in it. Only then will you prosper and succeed in all you do. This is my command. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." And so there have been times in my life where people have came to me and told me, "You have a gift for leading people. You have a leader's mindset." And growing up, my mom always told me my name means leader. And I always thought, like, it was leading my team in basketball for a win, or it was something else, being a team captain for the team. As I got older and I started to think on what or where God wanted me to lead, I didn't realize it was somewhere in the church, and it was with the youth. And so God has put challenges in my life to where I can be a better leader off the court and stuff. And so I'm grateful for the opportunities that God has put me in to lead the youth and to share the gospel with them and stuff. And when you realize that God has a calling for you to do something, to go somewhere, or to be something, like, you pretty much have no choice but to answer the calling, because it's to honor God for His will to be done and not ours. And so, as we see in Joshua 1, verses 1 through 18, Joshua's pretty much next in line after Moses. Like, he wasn't ready at first because he was under the wing of Moses, but he learned everything from him and Joshua wanted Moses to lead the people to the promised land. But Moses dies, pretty much. Moses dies, and Joshua is called by God to lead the people to the promised land. And God's telling him, like, He's not going to leave you or abandon you at all. And we tend to look at when God calls us to do something or to be somewhere, that God won't be there with us when we go through those things. But He's always going to be there no matter what. There's also things that we go through in our life. Like when we go through the toughest parts in our life and we start to think that God isn't there, I want you guys to know that God's always going to be there no matter what. Like, He's not going to leave you. He's not going to abandon you at all. And so things that we go through in our life when we feel like God isn't there. Like, for example, death in the family, parents getting divorced, breakups, losing our jobs, failing a test, feeling like we don't fit in anywhere. We go through a lot of things in life, and we tend to feel like God isn't there. I know In my personal life, I have felt that. My grandma passed away September 16th of 2010. And I was mad at God. I asked myself, why did he take her away from me and my family? I didn't realize that throughout the years of my life. But as I got older, I understood that she's in a better place and she's always watching over me and looking down on me. And that she's not in any more pain. She's not in any more, there's no more pain. There's no more sorrow. There's no more hurt there because she's in heaven spending eternity with God. And so when we go through something that we realize that God has blessed us with those things, whether they are opportunities or things that we want to do, and God opens a door for us to be able to do them, then we realize that God never leaves us and he will always be there for us. So the things that God will do for us when we put our faith and trust in him, he'll open doors that no man can close. We start to follow the path that he has for us. We start listening to what God tells us to do, whether it's through his word or through someone holding us accountable. Whenever we feel like we don't deserve to answer the call that God has for us in our life, we got to understand that God is always going to be there with us no matter what we do and wherever we go. And so how can we apply these things to our life today? Like all the things that I just mentioned, like how can we apply overcoming all the things that we go through in our life where we feel like God isn't there, and where we know God is there when we answer that call that he has for us? How can we apply all those things in our life today? I can give 3 reasons on how we can apply all those things in our life today and understanding that God is always going to be there for us. Number 1, understanding that God loves you and he cares for you. And so in Jeremiah 1:8, it says, "And don't be afraid of the people, for I will be with you and will protect you. I, the Lord, have spoken." As God was telling Jeremiah that he will be with him and protect him from the people because Jeremiah was afraid of them, God is telling us not to worry about anything and not to be afraid of anything that we go through, because he's always going to be there for us and he's always going to protect us. Number 2, know that God will never leave you. John 14:16 says, and I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate who will never leave you. When God says that he's never going to leave us, he truly means it. Yeah, we go through a lot of things in our life and we feel like God isn't there. But God's not leaving you. Like, he will never leave you. He's always there through the pain, the struggle, the suffering, the hurt, etc., etc. He's always going to be there and he'll never leave you. And the final thing is, do not listen to what the world says about you. Only listen to what God says about you. And in John 17:14, it says, "I have given them your word, and the world hates them because they do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world." As Christ followers, we got to understand, we don't belong here on earth. We don't belong to what the world says and does. We belong to what God tells us. We belong to what God tells us to do, and that's to listen to him and read his word and talk to him through prayer. God's calling us to be faithful in his promises. Therefore, we should exhibit boldness and confidence in his promises. Pretty much just being committed to following what God has planned for us. If God tells you to go to this area and share his word, go, because he has something planned for you. If God is telling you to go to this school and be a light to the people in the school, go, because he's telling you to go there. And so in closing, I have 3 questions that I want to ask. Where do you feel like God is calling you to lead? How will you be ready when you answer the calling from God to lead? And are you willing to sacrifice everything to follow God's path for you to be that leader that he called you to be. Overall, just be that leader that God called you to be. That's all it really is. And answer the call that God has for you. And he'll direct your path.